Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Phil Feldman, and I am National Director of Revenue Cycle Management at Sandata Technologies. I've been with Sandata for 8 years, always involved with the Sandata Revenue Cycle Management Group. I have been in home care for 23 years in various capacities with varying agencies providing different types of services from skilled post-acute to custodial care, adult, pediatrics. I've pretty much run the gamut in home care, and been with Sandata, as I said, for about 8 years now, and I love this industry. What we're going to talk about today is something that's very near and dear to my heart. The name of the presentation is the ins and outs of insourcing versus outsourcing revenue cycle management. So let's get into it. So a lot of you probably came into this webinar thinking, I've heard of outsourcing, I've been thinking of outsourcing, maybe not. Maybe the thought never occurred to you, but it piqued your interest. Maybe you have some concerns. If I outsource, am I going to be incurring additional costs? Can I afford it? Will I get the quality that I need? Will the vendor be able to handle things with the same level of quality and performance as my internal team does? Will I lose control? Will I lose access to my data? Will they take over and I won't have a say in how the operation works? Am I too small? Does it really make sense for me? Am I too large? Am I getting economies of scale from being a large agency with a large internal department that an outsourced vendor could not give me? And then if I'm concerned about my performance, how do I really determine whether or not there's going to be a return on investment for outsourcing? Is it really going to improve my performance? We're going to go through all that today. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions. And then there's a very, very interesting computation that I'm going to walk you through. So really to the agenda for today is, what is outsourcing in the first place? What does that really mean? What is it? What are the things that I can outsource? Do I have to outsource everything? Can I outsource some of it? Why would I even consider it in the first place? And then we'll get into the cost and benefit analysis of what outsourcing can potentially bring to the table for you. So what is outsourcing? Outsourcing is, as it says, the contracting out of any task or operation or process that could be done internally at your company to a third party for any particular period of time. And I liken it to, we all do it. We all hire vendors in our own personal lives. We hire landscapers, we hire plumbers, we hire electricians. They're either doing things that we don't have the capability of doing, or they're doing things that we don't have the time to do, or both. So it is obviously a very common occurrence, and it's also a common occurrence in business, in the revenue cycle world. Hospitals outsource their billing, large healthcare providers, home care agencies. There's a very large industry for outsourcing multiple different types of functions within healthcare. And we'll talk about whether you want to outsource everything or partly. Maybe it's a project that you need done to collect a certain block of receivables or get something set up with a certain payer. Maybe there's consulting work that you want to do. Maybe you want to bring someone in to take a look at your operation and run some reports and look at your performance and provide input, guidance, suggestions. So this is the revenue cycle. This is the healthcare revenue cycle. And what is a revenue cycle? It's the set of processes that occur in a particular order that ultimately get you paid for the services that you provide. So it starts with intake, which is item 1 at the top, and runs all the way through number 9, reporting and analytics. Outsourcing in the custodial care world typically starts with billing and charge capture, number 4, and runs through. In the post-acute skilled world, It could start with number 2, insurance verification, could start with number 3, coding, which is more complex in that environment than in the custodial care environment. What you want to try to get out of your process, and by the time you hit number 9, you want to be looking at what are the things that need to occur further up the line that impact my timeline to get paid and how much I get paid. So you want to grab that intelligence and swim back upstream in your revenue cycle to where the issue is occurring and put some steps in to rectify that. But why would you want to outsource? Obviously our mission, what we want to concentrate and focus on, why did we get into this business in the first place? The foundation is to take care of our clients. That's number 1, priority number 1, the most important. But also in terms of that, we want to grow our agency. We want to grow our business, because if you're not growing, you're shrinking. In the custodial care world, your clients don't live forever. So you need to be adding new clients on a continual basis. In the post-acute world, your clients get better. So they get discharged, and you want to still be adding new clients. So you need to be growing in that environment. And then thirdly, you want to be profitable. And most of us will say, we didn't get into this business to get rich, but you still need to be profitable, because you want to be able to cover your overhead. You want to be able to pay your team. You want to be able to expand your business and provide more and better services. And you want to invest in programs that are ultimately going to serve and support the main foundational mission, which is client care. And in the outsourcing environment, that affords you the ability to have your revenue cycle perform at its peak, and also give you the time where you're not chasing down money and getting claims out the door, to concentrate and focus on your 3 priorities that are in this pyramid. Our environment is getting increasingly more complicated. So, we know, we can list the 5 or 6 challenges that we have, which, if you think about them, all become opportunities. So firstly, minimum wage, we all have to make sure we cover an increasing minimum wage. And it seems like payers don't really match that when it comes through, or it might be delayed. Value-based care, something very big going on in our industry now. It's a challenge in that we need to be able to invest in quality programs so that we can participate in these value-based programs. Many states are seeing forced consolidation. Payers are cutting back on the number of providers in their network. And if you don't have enough members of a particular payer, you're in danger of losing your contract. Consumer-directed care is another challenge. It's non-traditional, and if you're not in the game and you don't have an opportunity to participate, that could be a loss in revenue. Certainly payer diversity with managed care, with different programs, waiver programs. The payer environment has gotten enormously much more complex. And then mandated process and system changes. EVV, now aggregators are coming on the scene for claims and visits. So your environment has gotten much more complicated than it was in the past. But all of those challenges, if you think about them, are also opportunities. Minimum wage is a way to compete. Being able to pay a minimum wage and still be profitable is a way to compete against the fast food chains and all of the other opportunities that our caregivers have to go to. Value-based care is a way to get paid more for the services that you provide. The consolidation, if you're one of the remaining providers, then you're going to be larger than you were in the past, because the volume from the smaller providers is going to accrue to you. Consumer-directed care, if you can participate in that, is a added revenue opportunity. Increased payer diversity, you have an opportunity to address more payers, a larger piece of the member population. And the system changes. EVV provides value operationally and clinically beyond compliance. So you want to be able to focus on that. And if you are spending your time as I say, chasing down payments, chasing down claims, trying to figure out how you're going to bill in an environment that's always changing. It's going to absorb you away from being able to focus on the opportunities that are in our industry today. So really, how do you want to look at this? Certainly you want, what does outsourcing give you? It gives you access to certainly expertise. An outsourcing vendor has the experience, has dealt with the payer environment that you're in, has dealt with your market, and knows how to make things happen more quickly and eliminate the learning curve that you would have. Resources, certainly. I spoke with, interestingly, an agency that's billing out $10 million a year with one biller. And they were very satisfied with that. But then I asked them, and I got an interesting look on their face when I asked the question, what happens if something happens to that person? How quickly will you be able to replace them? What happens if your new hire is not really successful? It's going to take you 3 months to figure that out, 3 months to manage them out legally, and 3 months to find a replacement. So you're way behind the 8 ball. Who's doing that work? You. What's the impact on cash flow? Possibly not good. So strategically, it needs to fit in terms of allowing you to meet your goals, allowing you to concentrate on the things that you want to concentrate on and need to concentrate on, that you might not even really realize until you think about it a little further. The considerations, concerns, certainly control, cost, security, confidentiality, quality, responsiveness. What's going to happen to my employees? What's the morale, impact? Will I get the customer service that I need? And that really depends on the vendor. And we'll talk about that in a further presentation down the road, presentation chapter number 2. But in the meantime, you need to find the right vendor who is going to provide all these things to you. As far as employee morale goes, what we have found for agencies that we outsource for, the employees really get repurposed into other functions. They may get moved to intake, they may move to scheduling. You have employees who are knowledgeable of the industry, the business, and your client base and your payer base, who can successfully perform other functions to match your growth that's going to come out of your ability to concentrate on generating that growth. So what you're going to gain, certainly performance. That's what an outsourced vendor gets up in the morning to do. And invariably, the performance gets better. Scalability, certainly in terms of, you don't have to worry about as I grow, when do I have to hire another biller? And you always need to be investing in that, because you always need to have the capacity beyond your growth. Just like in the caregiver environment, you need to have caregivers on hand to handle the additional business. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You're going to hire, you're going to have caregivers available. Same thing with your revenue cycle staff. Outsourcing is a variable cost. Your cost grows in the same alignment that you grow. Their job is to focus, to provide expertise, to provide continuity. All of that is what they do, and that's their purpose. And then risk management, you don't have to worry about losing a valued team member. That $10 million agency doesn't have to worry about losing their one biller, and then their billing completely stops if that happens. And then you're going to get intelligence. You're going to get data. You're going to get transparency. You're going to get training for your staff if that's something that's needed. So if there are issues with authorizations, et cetera, a good vendor will provide an in-service to your schedulers and your intake department on how to read an auth and how to address potential authorization issues. So what do I need to know? How do I determine what my current level of performance is, so that I can determine what my goals are and compare that to what an outsource agency says they can bring me? So this is a tool, and I can send you a copy of this tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet template, and just send me a note, phil.feldman@sandata.com. And This will, you insert your billing information, you insert your adjustments, it calculates your net build, you insert your deposits, it tells you shortfalls, overages, etc., and what percentage you're collecting on a monthly basis. And this is something that needs to be looked at over time, because as you can see on a monthly basis, you have peaks and valleys in collections. And this is just, your deposits here are just what came in. So it's not what was, so for instance, for January 2022, it's not the 75,000 isn't applicable per se to the 193,000 net build. It's just, what did I receive this month against, what was billed out. So completing this schedule for a period of time shows you overall on average what your cash performance is to your billing. So this agency is in pretty much in trouble. They're billing 85, they're collecting 85, 86% of their billing. So if an outsourcer can get you to 99% and can demonstrate that by their experience with their other customers, that's a huge windfall that's coming back to you. This agency, I would be surprised if they're still standing on their feet at this stage of the game, because they may be covering their payroll, but they're certainly not covering anything else. Also something to look at as you break out your adjustments. What's my adjustment percentage as a percentage of what I build? 4.7% is particularly high. And how can I get that down? What do my adjustments consist of? There may be a period of time where you have a retroactive increase, so you needed to adjust claims, but those would be upward adjustments. These are all minuses. What's going on? Am I not billing correctly in the first place? A good vendor is going to be looking at this and is going to be looking at letting you know what's going on with your claims. Why do they need to be adjusted? How do I get them right in the first place so that I'm not adjusting my claims? Adjustments also mean delays. Maybe you billed incorrectly. You definitely billed incorrectly. Are those adjustments coming from payer denials, payer short pays? What's going on that's driving those adjustments? Getting that intelligence back from a good outsourcing vendor will help you understand that, help you get clean, correct claims out much sooner, which definitely benefits your cash flow. So let's take a look at our ROI computation. And this is something that we're very excited about. So this will be, excuse me, coming up on Sandata's website very soon so that you can utilize it. But let's take a hypothetical agency. So here's an agency that's billing out $1 million a year, collecting 91% of that $1 million. 91% sounds okay. What's it costing them to do that? Excuse me. You need one biller. So let's say an average biller costs about $50,000. Maybe there's $1,000 worth of overtime over the course of a year. But then it's not just the salary that's your cost for that biller. So you've got payroll taxes, employer level payroll taxes. Those typically run about 12% of payroll. You have FICA, that's your biggest cost in there. State unemployment, federal unemployment. There might be some local employer taxes that are in there. So these are average amounts of what things cost. Your insurance. So this is just employer insurance. So you've got workers' comp, you've got health, you've got life, you've got disability. If the individual workers' comp is mandatory, but if they enroll in your health plan, take life insurance and disability, there's typically an employer contribution towards that. And that runs around 8.6%, according to some statistics that we got from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Then other benefits, retirement, if they participate in your 401k, if they participate in your savings plan, and there's an employer contribution, it could run also typically based on the Bureau of Labor statistics, 2.3% of your wages, your base wages. Then you have other administration, so human resources, the cost to run payroll, all of that typically runs about 10% of base salaries, according to some industry research that we did. And then there are other costs. So rent, when I first saw that rent is a cost that should be considered, I didn't really think it was that important. But then I spoke to a very large agency, and the owner said, it's interesting that you bring up rent because I'm running out of space, and I was thinking about taking larger space. Now with outsourcing, if I don't need as much space, I may not have to move. So it's a consideration. What this template does is it's allowing you, all of the numbers that are in yellow, it's allowing you to enter into the computation. Certainly you're going to have computer and supplies and all the other overhead support costs to manage and support a staff. So your $50,000 a year biller can end up costing you $84,000 a year, most of which is mandatory ancillary costs associated with their employment. How does that factor in to the computation? So if we look at the internal costs of this agency, we've got $1 million in revenue. They're collecting 91%. So they're collecting $910,000. And that 91% comes from that previous calculation that we just went over back on the previous slide. So they did their homework and they calculated that 86% that we showed on that previous slide is 91% for this particular agency. So they're collecting $910,000 out of the million, which is a $90,000 shortfall. So they're giving up $90,000 a year that they are not collecting and leaving on the table with the payers. Their internal support costs are $84,000, which comes from here. That's our total. So their collected revenue, so the cost of their RCM function and their net throughput as a result of what they're leaving on the table, plus what it's costing them to collect it, is out of the million, they're only collecting about $826,000. Now let's study what the outsourcing would be. Our typical experience in outsourcing is 99.2%. That's what we average across the board for our entire client base. So what we're leaving on the table, instead of 90,000, is only 8,000 on the table. That's an additional $82,000 of throughput from our outsource arrangement or relationship. There is some internal cost to support RCM functions. So some of your staff time will need to be there to support an outsourcing vendor, maybe to provide authorizations, to address edit issues, to react and respond to input coming from the vendor, to ensure that the information that the vendor needs to do their job effectively is facilitated and they get it. So there is some cost with that. Let's build that cost in. And typically it's about 25% of your current cost. So that's how we got the 21,000 here. It's about 25% of the current cost there. Now let's look at the fee. So typical outsourcing fee is a percentage of collections. So the vendor charges a percentage of collections, which is good because that means they have skin in the game. Sometimes the fees could be different, and we'll talk about that in segment 2 of this webinar series. So it's roughly $30,000 a year for the fee. So their total cost is $51,000 a year for the $1 million worth of collections. But the benefit there is about $33,000 a year. So while they do still have some cost, it's significantly less than their internal cost was. And then if we take a look at the total, the net throughput is The increased collections, coupled with the decreased costs, is $150,000 a year win. So in essence, and that's why I say in some circumstances, in many circumstances, outsourcing is an investment versus a cost. And then think about the softer side of this. Think about the agency owners and management's ability to concentrate on the missions of the agency, to invest their time in growth, to invest the $115,000 in growth, in establishing new programs, in growing their client base, in setting up new revenue streams, new sources of revenue. Spoke to an agency at a conference last week that was looking for credentialing support, which we don't provide. But why do you need credentialing support? What she said is, I'm currently doing no MCO business at all right now. I want to get involved with MCOs. So there you are. She is considering, we're connecting her with a vendor for credentialing support, and she's looking at us for outsourcing revenue cycle management support because she's thinking strategically and wants to get into other areas of the business that will allow her to build further revenue and allow her to grow her agency. So this calculation will be available on our website very shortly. We'll send out an announcement when it is. It's completely user interactive. The cells that are designed for the user to enter data will be open, and this calculation will be completely driven. So you'll be able to tweak it. You'll be able to put costs in, take costs out, what if, do some what if analysis, and all of that. And certainly in that process, if you have questions, absolutely feel free to reach out to me, phil.feldman@sandata.com. So let's get back to our presentation. And just to let you know, the next steps, as I said, part 2, selecting an outsourcing vendor and contracting. How do you go about that process? What are the characteristics of a good vendor? What are elements of an appropriate contract that keeps the vendor active and working towards what it is, what your goals are? And then management of that vendor, that's part 3. How do you manage that vendor? How do you work with them to optimize that relationship? And what's the analysis that you need to go through? And that's our presentation for today. So to talk about Sandata Revenue Cycle Management, what is it that we do? Certainly we provide all of those benefits that we spoke about today in terms of allowing you the time and freedom through both time and profits from the relationship to focus and invest in your growth. It helps you improve your profiles with payers, because payers, believe it or not, really do want to pay. They just don't want to deal with providers who are consistently pounding on their provider support area for claims issues. It helps improve your profitability because we're managing your claims and denials and revenue cycle process for you, so that your billing and your revenue is maximized and your cash flow is time to receive your money is reduced and cash flow is also optimized. And then we're providing support. So financial compliance, documentation, we will work with your accountants if they're looking for information on collectability of AR, sometimes in relation to audits, even accrediting body audits, providing documentation, things of that nature. Goes with the territory, we support that. That's it for our presentation today. If you would like to schedule some time to chat with somebody more about what RCM outsourcing is all about, certainly you can use these to connect with someone, or go to these links. And then to register for our next segment of the series, which is on Tuesday, May 2nd. You can use this symbol and connect with us that way or through that link.